VALORANT just announced that Bind is coming back to the game with the start of the next act on April 25th, and there is some pretty exciting news because there are a bunch of map changes coming to the game as well. So in this video, we're going to break down all of those map changes and talk a little bit about what it means that Bind is coming back with Episode 6 Act 3, but let's start with those map changes. Okay, so the first major one is by a teleporter exit. Instead of being back where it used to be, they've replaced that with like a market stall and moved the teleporter right up to the door next to Bath. This is a pretty big change and actually should make teleporting a lot safer. You know, it's kind of interesting. Normally the teleporter from A to B is the really safe one to use. However, this one now becomes a lot safer to use as well and allows for teleporters to get onto site a lot quicker. So I think this is going to be a really interesting change and just make attacking easier in general, especially because once that door opens, you're only exposed to the Bath angles. You're not exposed to the really long angle looking into their spawn. So really awesome change there. Next, if we actually move into Bath, you'll notice that they brought this wall a lot closer in. It used to be way further out, and now there's just less space in general in Bathroom, which should make it a little bit easier to clear for attackers overall. Then moving to move on to site, they made the doorway a little bit wider, which should make it basically impossible to stick on the right side of that doorway, which used to be a kind of big thing that would happen. Next up, when we actually move on to A site, they messed around with the wall a little bit and particularly added this little barrel here. I'm not sure how much this is necessarily going to do, but it does add a little bit of height variety that you're going to have to be prepared for when pushing. So it should give defenders a couple more angles to play from. Another really interesting thing is that if we move back towards CT, they've made this wall that's extra diagonal, and they've made it a lot straighter and then a sharper diagonal at the end there. Again, this should make it a little bit easier to clear when you are a defender coming in for a retake. So, you know, some of those parts of the map that felt really clunky should feel a lot better to push into now. Next up, we have triple. Triple used to look like this, you know, it was triple. But now we actually have like quadruple, as one of the boxes basically fell over. What this should do is it should make it harder to play triple and then also play from main. You know, a lot of time you could play from main and then push up on triple, but now you have to swing all the way around that box to get deep in the corner, which should make it a little bit more difficult. I honestly don't know how this change is going to impact gameplay, but I expect this is going to be one of the bigger ones. It creates some extra hard angles to clear. It adds some more planting opportunities as well, so I'm very curious to see how this change affects things. But A was not the only site to see some changes. B got a couple changes. One thing they did is they made the doorway from site into CT a little bit wider, which should make it a little bit easier for defenders to hold from there, as they can hold from a like weirder, deeper angle. It also makes it a little bit harder to mess around with those angles, but overall, I don't think it's necessarily that big of a change. It just, you know, makes sight lines into the enemy spawn a little bit. The other thing they did is they added this little gap here and some vents, which allow you to throw a util from site into elbow. I think this is going to make some really interesting strats where you can have like people rushing onto site and then like a KO can throw a support flash or Sky can throw a support flash through that little cubby for someone who's pushing through elbow. These are the little changes I really like. It also means you can be sitting elbow and then like shoot a recon dart through there and then maybe Sova ult. So there's some really interesting things that this little gap can do, and I think it's actually the most exciting change on the map. Overall, those are all the changes, and they're very, very cool, but I quickly want to talk about why we're seeing Bind return. We randomly got this as a tweet, and it's kind of weird because in the past, all returning of maps and maps rotating out have happened on episode launches. We know that next act, we're not getting a character or a map, and instead we're getting the beta of the tournament system or the premier system. So it's really interesting to see that with the launch of that, we are also seeing the return of Bind. They didn't announce if they're removing a map. It could be that they want to, you know, move from having 7 maps to 8, but that does make it a little clunky in pro play. So I expect they are going to take another map out of, you know, rotation, but it's going to be curious. Are they going to start, you know, returning maps more often? I was always under the impression that it was an episode thing, so twice a year they would switch up the maps, but maybe it's going to be like a every other act kind of thing, and we're going to see maps rotate in and out a lot faster. I'm really curious to see what it is. I'm curious what map they are removing as well. But yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts on these changes in the comments down below. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.